guys, it is Paul, the MMA Shark, coming at you with a very, very busy weekend of mixed martial arts and, of course, mixed martial arts handicapping. So I am prepared to crush these cards. If you're signed up with me, be prepared. If you're not signed up, the website's right there, www.themmashark.com. Until Saturday at 6 p.m., half off is embedded into the website. No promo code needed. You get your first month for $55, and there's 13 events. It's $3-4 a card, really, for the first month. So, should be a great month. I'm really looking forward to February. Coming off a profitable January. I didn't have a ton to work with, but both UFC cards, profitable. The second one, largely profitable. And PFL Contender Series is tonight. Not much to work with there. I sent out some small plays. I will give you guys a free play on that, but it's nothing spectacular. It's Michelle Montigue. She's a lock, first fight of the night. Dynamic wrestler, IBJFF Jiu-Jitsu champion. Michelle Montague does not lose that fight under any circumstances. My suggestion would be parlay her somewhere because it's a lot of juice. She's minus 325. So tomorrow night, Bellator 290, Fedor versus Bader 2. Comes at us live from Inglewood, California, and it's starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, just ahead of UFC Vegas 68. So tomorrow night's sponsor will be coffee. Tons and tons of coffee this weekend. We'll be going until 4:30 in the morning Saturday night with MMA. So rest up. A lot of tickets to be cashed, a lot of fights to cap. Very, very busy Saturday on my end. So with that said, let's dig into Bellator 290 a little bit. I don't want to make an incredibly long preview video of it. But at the same token, Bellator... I got the MMA Shark pen today, too. I'm all decked out in white and MMA Shark. At the same token, Bellator did something smart with this card. They're going on CBS for the first time, and their prelims are incredible. Usually with Bellator and PFL... Sometimes LFA, you get these crazy minus 1,000 fights, minus 3,000 fights on the prelims. That is far from the case on Bellator 290 prelims. So they kick off the action with 3-0 Ethan Hughes taking on 1-0 Yusuf Karakaya. What's very interesting on this fight is Ethan Hughes opened the minus 200 favorite at 3-0, and he's now been bet down to plus 120 in this fight. He's fighting, he's a Gracie affiliate gym. All three of his pro wins have come by finish. 2 by knockout, 1 by submission. And it's not been the greatest competition, but even his amateur, he was 5-0 as an amateur with five finishes. Taking on Yusuf Karakaya, who is the bigger fighter in this. He's had one fight, and it was in Denmark versus Ali Demak. He won by first round rear naked choke. So, it's a first fight of 25. It's not the best fight to lay your money on, but, I think it could be a good fight at 170. I don't see it being a snoozer. I think that it's crazy that much money came out on Yusuf Karakaya, but that is why 91% of people that bet on MMA are not profitable. So, and I'm not saying Ethan Hughes is the pick. I'm just saying that it's crazy that many people bet Yusuf Karakaya down that far. Second fight on the Bellator prelims, not much to talk about. Isaiah Hokic versus Peter Ishiguro. Peter Ishiguro is 2-1. Isaiah Hokic is also 2-1. Isaiah Hokic is a prominent wrestler, very, very good at the collegiate level as well. He's a huge favorite at minus 400. I'm personally passing on this fight. I mean, you want a free play on it? I'll give you a free play. It's Isaiah Hokic. There's no situation where he loses this fight. Training at a Team Body Shop MMA. They're doing big things, but for me, I don't go past minus 225. And to parlay, I don't go past minus 400 unless it's in the distance, but my system is profitable and many are not. So passing on a fight like that is no harm, no foul. To lay 6 units to win 1 when fists are involved is absolutely dumb. And the fact that people continually do it just blows my mind. Thomas Peterson on LFA a few weeks ago was minus 2,000. He got bet up to minus 4,000. Yes, he won the fight, but imagine risking $4,000 to win 1,000. And he actually got caught in the fight a couple times. So any fighter can win at any time. I think MMA odds are very far-fetched. When you see a fight that's, minus 155 to plus 120, in the world of MMA, that's honestly a pick'em fight, and there's no implied favorite when the odds are that tight. So, fight 3, we have a very interesting fight. American top team Portland standout Jalen Bates will be putting his undefeated record on the line. He is 6-0 as a professional, taking on Jormel Lugo, who is 6-1 as a professional. Lugo's lone loss in his career has come to the fan favorite and the fan hated Danny Sabatello. It was a very boring decision back at Bellator 278 last April. Lugo's looked really good in his career. Really good submission win over Keith Lee. A great win over Cass Bell, who just beat Justin Scoggins in Bellator. Cash is a plus 700 favorite, which the MMA Shark called. One of our main underdog hits of the year happened in December in that fight. The odds makers aren't giving Bates much respect here. He is 6-0. He's very aggressive. He just hasn't fought in the level of competition that Lugo fought. 6-0 plus 245. Lugo 8-1. One loss to Sabatello minus 295. I think it's a closer fight than that. I'm going to have a play on it, but again, to lay minus 295 on Lugo, I think is insane. So, and favorites have been cashing at 70% on Bellator, so I get why these odds are a bit inflated. And, that just gives us more opportunity to cash underdog tickets. And, when I've been putting out the 5-unit max dog plays, they went 78.5% in 2022. That's a wild number considering the average odd in those fights are plus 180. So I've gone as high as plus 300, plus 115, but, they average out to plus 180. We're winning 9.2 units on average on max dog fights. So next up, we have a very interesting fight. And I'm going to call it the resurging because I think his career is resurging a little bit. He's coming off 3 losses, but, he's not bad. Darian Caldwell is coming into this fight at 14-6. He's coming off 3 losses in a row to Enrique Barzola, Leandro Higo, and AJ McKee Jr. AJ McKee is one of the best in the world. That's not really a horrible loss to have on his resume. The Enrique Barzola fight, which came at Bellator 273, Caldwell was smoking him, but gassed in the fight. And a gas tank is something I would worry about in this fight versus Nikita Mikhailov. I'm not superly high on Nikita Mikhailov. He was minus 1,000 his last fight over Blaine Schutt, and he started to slow down himself in the 3rd round. And, he was up 2 rounds to 0, clearly. But Blaine Schutt started landing some big shots, and, Blaine Schutt is not a striker. He's a wrestler. So I think this fight solely is going to come down to conditioning. If Darian Caldwell gasses after the 1st round, like he has in his past couple fights, I think it's going to be a problem for him as Nikita poses a threat on the feet and on the ground. But at the same token, Darian Caldwell, he's a finisher. He can do it by submission. He's very good top game, heavy pressure. He also had 2 losses to Hyogi Hiraguchi, another top in the world. But he's starting to age. He is now 35 years old. But we'll see what happens in that fight. Next prelim, female, 125-pound fight. And I'm puzzled by the odds in this. We have Diana Avsaragova versus Alejandra Lara. And the odds are at a pick'em on this fight. I checked Tapology, and Deanna's at 96% are picking Deanna to win this fight as a dog who is now plus 100. Alejandra Lara at 9-6 is coming up the minus 115 favorite. She's coming off 3 decision losses in a row, one being split. Prior to that, she won a decision and a ground and pound win over the 4-5 Taylor Turner. Previous to that, she fought some real competition in Juliana Velasquez. Lost a split decision. Juliana Velasquez was 7-0 at the time, and Ilia Leigh McFarland, she got an armbar loss in the 3rd round. As far as Diana Avsaragova, she is coming into this fight at 5-0. She is 3-0 in Bellator. A split decision win, a knockout win, and a pretty impressive decision win over Kyra Batara at Bellator 276. She's gritty. She comes forward. She has a really good clinch game against the cage. She throws in strikes. She's got some good Muay Thai striking. just puzzled on the line. Why is she the underdog? Why is she the underdog? I will get that one figured out. These are the fights I typically don't get wrong, but some trickery to say the least in this fight. The line's telling me to bet Lara, but I haven't found anything to back that yet, but we'll see. Next fight, really looking for, and by the way, out of the 13 fights on this Bellator 290 card, 10 of them are prelims, and we just have a 3-fight main card, hence the switch to CBS. It will be very long and drawn out. With UFC coming on at 10 p.m., chances are Bellator is going to try to go over 10 p.m. to gain some viewership on UFC, so we'll see what happens there. Next prelim, we have Grant Neal taking on Carl Albrektsson. Carl has been impressive. He did lose his last fight to Carl Moore. He got choked out in the second round. Coming into that, he was coming in hot. He was on a four-fight win streak. Two of which, were in Bellator. He took a fight in Bellator and then had a fight for Superior Challenge 22, where he knocked out a 10-10. Came back to Bellator, got the decision win over an 18-6, and then took the submission loss to Carl Moore. A loss to Carl Moore is not the end of the world. He's a very tough SBG fighter, former Cage Warriors champion. Going to be taking on Grant Neal in this fight. Grant Neal is a fighter that you don't know which version of him will show up. If the version that just defeated Christian Edwards shows up, it's going to be a good night for him. If the version that fought Alex Polizzi shows up, he's just going to lose a decision because, sometimes he just does not come out aggressive enough. I think the odds are pretty right on this one. You have Carl, and I'm checking to see if anything changed because they're constantly changing. Carl Albrektsson is minus 140, Grant Neal plus 120. I think the odds are completely right on this one. You have Grant Neal fighting at a Genesis training team in Colorado. You shouldn't think cardio would be an option. He is a 3-round fighter for sure. Albrektsson seems to kind of full send early in the fight. I'm not sure if Grant will be ready for that pressure, but he has never been finished in his career. At 27 years old, he does have a 2-age advantage there. And as far as height and reach, that goes to Carl. He has a 2-inch reach advantage, and he is 3 inches taller. So, interesting fight. Like I said, there's really no chalky prelims on this fight. We got minus 200s and minus 300s, but, we can bet our way around them, no problem. More prelims, a lot of prelims. Like I said, a very big prelim. Major up-and-comer wrestler, striker in Max Rohskopf. He is coming into this fight versus Henry Corrales, the minus 490 favorite. That's more of a Bellator prelim. And it's kind of crazy that he's getting that kind of love at minus 490. Henry Corrales isn't bad. He's not a bad fighter at all. If you look at Max Rohskopf's previous fights, a decision win over Jordan Bailey, a knockout win on Cage Warriors over Jeff Creighton. He did have a fight in the UFC. It was UFC Fight Night back in 2020, where he took on Austin Hubbard, and he just gave up on the stool after the second round. Other than that, all of his most recent fights have been submission wins. Chris Gonzalez is coming into this fight 7-2. He did get submitted in the first round over Usman Nurmagomedov, his last fight. Prior to that, he landed a head kick from hell. Love when I can say head kick from hell, especially when we were on it, which we were, over Syed Awad. He did get knocked out by Godi Yamauchi. Previous to that, he was making a solid run in Bellator. He submitted Roger Huerta. He had a back-to-back split decision wins over Aaron McKenzie and Vladimir Tokov. So, again, I think the odds are a bit wild in this fight. Henry Corrales plus 390. Ahmed Magomedov minus 490. I can see Ahmed just taking him down and controlling him and possibly getting the submission. But at the same token, I could see Henry Corrales staying safe in this fight. Might make for a good fight. Next up, we have Muhammad Barkhamov taking on Lorenz Larkin. Lorenz Larkin has been around forever. Odds in this fight, by the way, Barkhamov is minus 210. Lorenz Larkin is plus 180. Lorenz Larkin has really had a career resurgence. He's coming into this fight at 36 years old with, he hasn't lost since he lost to Paul Daly in 2017. So he's coming in on a 7-fight win streak. Uh, Muhammad Barkhamov is coming into this fight, the younger fighter. He's 29 years old. He did choke out Jaleel Willis his last fight. That was definitely a signature win. That's a way to make an impression, your Bellator debut, to come in and submit Jaleel Willis, who was 15-2 at the time, in the first round with a guillotine choke. I don't see him necessarily having his way with Lorenz Larkin. Prior to that, he fought a lot of fights on ACA, ACB. It used to be ACB, it's ACA now. He knocked out Brett Cooper. He submitted Jesse Taylor. A lot of wins in the first round. He's a prolific finisher. Lorenz Larkin hasn't been finished a whole lot. He's had a couple knockout losses, but, finding some career resurgence. And, he's going to be the smarter fighter in this fight at a Millennium MMA. But he's been knocked out by Paul Daly. He fought Derek Brunson in the UFC. It was an epic fight. Went to a 3-round decision. Brad Tavares. So a lot of UFC experience there. So experience edge, Larkin, the youth, and more skills at this part of his career goes to Barkhamov. Put it this way, if this fight happened 3 years ago before Larkin started this 6-fight win streak, I'm pretty sure Larkin would have been a plus 800 underdog in this fight. So take that to heart if you are betting it. Final prelim, and I will have plays on all these fights, www.themmashark.com. Half off right now, ends on Saturday. Your final prelim, we have the slumping yet thrown to the wolves, is how I can best describe Neiman Gracie. He's a very one-dimensional fighter, and the worst thing he could have done was started to work on strikes because, before he really started putting his time into boxing, he was able to fend off everything, get the takedowns, and get the submissions. And, he switches camps, Renzo Gracie now, but he's been doing a lot of work on stand-up, and his stand-up just sucks. But his ground game is unbelievable. He'll snatch your heel, he'll snatch your neck, he'll snatch your arm. Anything on the ground, he can get it done. Coming off a knockout loss to Gotti Yamauchi and a decision loss to Logan Storley. He was a favorite in the Logan Storley fight. We smashed Logan Storley in that fight. Logan was 12-1 at the time. It was the main event, 5-round fight. And it was a really good fight. He took a lot of good punches in that fight. Logan doesn't have the striking that Gotti Yamauchi has, so I can understand why Gotti Yamauchi was able to put him out and Storley wasn't. The Storley fight with Neiman Gracie was basically wrestling versus jiu-jitsu, and Logan Storley inserted a striking game and was able to do that. My question would be, can Dante Schiro do that? Dante Schiro has been submitted one time as a pro, and that was his last fight versus Luka Poklik. Luka Poklik is nowhere near Neiman Gracie on the ground, but he does have hands. Bellator 278, he knocked out Scotty Hoa, and that was in the 3rd round, I believe. Prior to that, on the regional scene, he had some finishes, some submission wins. He's a tough fighter. I free lean on this fight. I think Neiman Gracie comes back off back-to-back losses and gets the win in this fight, most likely by submission. I would probably say in the 2nd round. He doesn't seem to force things. If it's there, he'll go for it. If it's not there, he will be composed and look for that better shot. And that's just not something he did in his last fight. So, very interesting featured prelim. And let's not forget, Neiman Gracie is not no spring chicken. He is 34 years old. Dante Schiro out of Chosen Few Gym. He trains in Madison, Wisconsin. A lot of friends of mine, they say he's the hardest worker in the room. I feel like all fighters are the hardest worker in the room, and all fighters have had the best camp of their life. It's always been said, but I'm told Dante Schiro puts the work in. But he's going to have to put the submission defense work in if he's going to find a win in this fight. Neiman Gracie by submission, I'm calling it. Main card, we have a barn burner of a fight and 2 title fights on the main card tomorrow night. And the main card is at 9 p.m. on CBS. Bellator's debut on CBS. And I don't think they could have picked a better fight to start the main card. You have, and the odds in this one too, blowing my mind. We have Sabah Homasi versus Brendan Ward. Both fighters completely resurgent in their career. Sabah Homasi, killer be-killed fighter. Irish, Brendan Ward, killer be-killed fighter. And both coming off several knockout wins. Sabah Homasi was put out by Paul Daly. I feel like anytime we are talking about a 170, 185-pound fight in Bellator that is of sense, they've either knocked out or been knocked out by Paul Daly. But Sabah Homasi coming into this fight at 17-10. He is the minus 195 favorite. He did have a submission win over Jaleel Wills and a knockout win over Makon Mukano to get to this fight. Prior to that, he lost a decision to Andrei Koreshkov and a knockout to Paul Daly. Tons of Bellator experience here. Sabah Homasi is also a UFC veteran. He does have 2 knockout losses to Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which isn't obviously the worst thing. Abdul Razak Al Hassan has been knocking out anyone he fought. He did get knocked out by Tim Means too. Minus 195. I don't know how good that chin really is. What a great comeback story here on Brennan Ward. He is the plus 165 in this. After his fight in 2017 versus Fernando Gonzalez, he admitted he had some personal problems, had to have some treatments done, and he was inactive for 5 years until 2020. He comes back at Bellator 274 versus very low-level competition in Brandon Bell, gets the knockout win. He comes back in 2022, Bellator 282, taking on Cassius Kane, and 12-7 at the time, and a brutal standing TKO loss in the win. I'm sorry, it was a brutal loss for Kane. Knocks him out in the second round. Man, 2 prolific finishers. Brendan Ward, if his stuff's together, he is absolute fire. Prior to the long length, he was just knockout win after knockout win. He was knocked out by Tandem McCory during that run, 21 seconds in the first round. The Barn Cat, if you remember Tandem McCory, he was a striker. He was a killer. His UFC, he was in the UFC, was out of the UFC, made it back in, and unfortunately was not able to make that run that I thought he truly had in him. Sabah Homasi versus Brendan Ward, expect nothing more than fireworks. I think I'm going to have a max play on this fight. Obviously, that's subscribers only, and that's really all I can say about that fight right now, but I have a very strong lean on that. And, by the way, it's noon Eastern Standard Time right now when I'm recording this on Friday. I see a lot of these other people doing previews on Monday and Tuesday. Do you guys not take into account that fight week, so much happens, and that's why it's better to pay a handicapper. Anyone can come on here and give free plays a week out. So much develops throughout the week. I wouldn't dare. And, obviously line movement, sometimes I will text the play out on a Monday of fight week if the line's moving to get our best value. But, the MMA Shark, the way we think of things, our best value is when we have all the information, when all the calculations are done. Let's see how they look on the scale. Let's see what develops on fight week. So much can happen. So, if you're watching other places and they're putting their lock picks out for free on Sunday and Monday, that's great and all, but there's a reason why I'm a professional at this, and there's a reason that I am plus 528 units since last January, and that number is only going to climb. We will have winning nights, we will have losing nights. At the end of the day, our system will always be profitable. Just make sure you follow it. I got some guys that pick and choose what fights they bet on, and if you're buying a system, stick to the system. Co-main event on CBS tomorrow night. Bellator MMA Middleweight Championship is on the line, where we have undefeated Johnny Eblen, who is up to a minus 255 favorite, taking on the 13-3 Anatoly Tokov. Let's talk about Anatoly Tokov so far. First, 32 years old. He is training out of Russia. His fighting style is combat sambo. He has had now, 6 fights in Bellator. He is 6-0. He has 2 submissions, 2 decisions, 2 knockouts. So the combat sambo can get the opponent to the ground and get them in trouble. As far as main names that he has knocked off, not really. Muhammad Allah, decent fighter. Gerald Harris was 25-7 at the time. He's been putting competition away. First round knockout last fight on Bellator 282. So tough fighter. His one loss came on M1. His last loss in 2016 over Razaman Emeev. Not a fighter I'm familiar with, not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and say, Emeev was a killer and he finished him. I have no clue who Ramazan Emeev is. Prior to that, he didn't lose since 2012. So, 2 losses in 2012, 1 loss in 2016, entered Bellator in 2017, and is undefeated since. 7-0 in Bellator. Johnny Eblen. I'm sure we are all familiar with Johnny Eblen, American top team standout, fighting out of Coconut Creek, Florida. Solid wrestling, coached by Mike Brown. All the studs at American top team. Want to give a shout out to our boy Grant Dawson, doing big things in the UFC. 15-1, American top team. Do not sleep on Grant Dawson. Johnny and Grant told me, he posted, I saw it on his Facebook. He said, Johnny Eblen for the win. Johnny Eblen for the win. I'd like to think Grant is right, but there's more to it. This is a tough fight, taking on his most experienced test yet. The opponent is 31-3 and plus 215. If that doesn't make something in my head go, wait a minute, nothing will. But if you look at the wins that Johnny Eblen has come off, a 5-round complete domination over Gegard Mousasi, a decision win over John Salter, a knockout win over Colin Huckenbody. He is just going through people. He is also 7-0 in Bellator. Wide lines in this. It's a 5-round fight. We know Johnny Eblen is a 5-round fighter. But we also know Anatoly Tokov, these Russians, man, they come to fight, and they are tough. I will be the first to admit, I had Gegard Mousasi beating Johnny Eblen. And Johnny Eblen proved me wrong in that fight. He proved a couple hundred of us wrong, because I think it was a 4-unit play that we had on Gegard Mousasi. And Eblen just had an answer for everything in that fight. So I think that it's a closer fight than the lines imply. I think I'm going to look for a prop on that fight. I'm going to find the value. Some handicappers throw out minus 400 plays, and they'll throw out a minus 500 and a minus 400 and say, oh, we swept it tonight. Well, so did my grandmother. I'm about picking a fight in every fight, giving my confidence level. My units go from 1/10 of a unit to 7 units. And if you are a subscriber, you have already gotten a text on Monday on a round total for UFC Saturday night, a max play that was sent out on Monday. You can't even get it close to that line anymore. So you'll make enough for 3 months on that fight. I am so confident on my Diamond Max play that I texted out on Monday for tomorrow night's UFC. If you sign up, obviously I'm going to send you it. Anyone that signs up, I reach out to them and get them caught up personally. So, here's what I've got out so far. So everyone knows the main event for Bellator 290. It is Fedor Emelianenko. I say Fedor, you say Fedor. I'm going Fedor. My whole life I've known him as Fedor. I know it can go either way, but he's Fedor to me. Taking on Ryan Bader. Last time these guys fought was the last time Fedor Emelianenko got knocked out. It was the last time he lost a fight. If you take out this fight, he has won 4 of his last 5. He knocked out Tim Johnson his last fight. He knocked out Quentin Rampage Jackson in 2019. Fedor did not fight at all in 2022. He aged a little bit in 2022. Ryan Bader did put him out in 35 seconds of the first round last time they fought. And, you just got to think, Fedor. I'm going to call Fedor the best MMA heavyweight striker of all time. And, everywhere you see, he's so old. And he is old. He's 46 years old. Ryan Bader is not 21 anymore. Ryan Bader is 39. He possesses the much more weapons in this fight. Better striking. Phenomenal wrestling. If he gets Fedor to the ground, I don't think Fedor is getting back up. But it's just something about Fedor in those hands. I'm not sleeping on him. I'm nowhere near saying he's the pick. I'm not saying to bet money on Fedor. Just saying it's his retirement fight. Some of the greatest MMA fighters of all time are chiming into this. They're coming to this fight. Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock. The Chael Sonnen, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Chael Sonnen here backing Fedor. And they're not here necessarily backing Fedor. They're here appreciating Fedor. They're here supporting Fedor. Win, lose, or draw, there won't be a draw. Someone's going to get finished. Win or lose in this fight, it's going to end with Fedor putting his gloves down for the final time after one of the most prolific heavyweight career of all time. Ryan Bader, training out of Tempe, Arizona. He's got cardio for days. And he's been a stud. I think UFC let him go a little too soon. He made the switch to Bellator back in 2017, and he's been their champ. He's taken his losses. Vadim Nemkov knocked him out. Corey Anderson knocked him out. Outside of that, he's been nothing but dominant. You look at his fight versus Czech Congo, which happened last May, the last fight he had. I mean, Czech is a prolific heavyweight striker. He's not Fedor Emelianenko, but he's a prolific striker. He was able to get the job done. Valentin Moldavsky, he was 11-1. He's a good striker. He's a good wrestler. He wasn't able to knock out Ryan Bader. In fact, the only one that was able to knock out Ryan Bader was Corey Anderson. And that was an overhand right in the first round. He smoked him. He flattened him. Corey Anderson, obviously, one of the best cardios possible. And keep in mind, Bader's not taking this fight at 205, where he's very capable of fighting. He's taking this fight at heavyweight, which is Fedor's natural weight. The lines right now are Ryan Bader minus 325, Fedor Emelianenko plus 270. All signs indicate that Ryan Bader will knock him out or put him out in that fight, and Fedor will happily retire into the sunset with the millions of dollars he's guaranteed for tomorrow night. But don't sleep on Fedor. You never know. He is 40-6, the greatest MMA heavyweight of all time. It's going to be sad to see him leave. You know, many wrote him off years ago, and he's won 4 out of his last 5. You know, is he gonna learn from the previous Ryan Bader fight? You know, do you think Bader's just gonna come in there and smoke him in the first 30 seconds again? Some do think that. So we'll see what happens. All in all, a really solid, top to bottom, 14 fights on Bellator. Congratulations to Bellator on the CBS deal. I think that's huge for you guys, and I hope that your season stays more active. Now that we're hitting the Bellator season, the next 3 months of Bellator look great. I'm excited to see what the next 3 months look like. Bellator likes to take several months off in a row, and, you know, that's how you lose momentum. So hopefully they just, like UFC, continue with events weekly, bi-weekly. You know, LFA, look what LFA is doing right now. You know, every other week they have a show. Friday night, stealing the show on UFC Fight Pass. I think LFA is the fastest growing promotion in all of mixed martial arts. And I think the MMA Shark is the #1 handicapper. I don't think that. I know that, but everyone subscribed is cashing tickets week after week, month after month. Last losing month was August of 2022. August sucked. Mainly the Usman Edwards card held that one back. But you lose 1 month out of the last 2 months. You lose 2 months out of the last 27 months. I'm doing something right. www.themmashark.com. So much MMA this weekend. I will have a UFC preview up in the next 24 hours. So Bellator comes first, then we switch over to UFC. Make it a big deal.